Hello and welcome to the News by Standards. Serving Met Police officers have been taken away from tackling serious crime and terrorism and instead told to investigate wrongdoing in the force. Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley said about 90 officers had been moved away from fighting serious and organised crime to the Met's professional standards team. He has said there are hundreds who should not be in the force. It comes after the force was branded as institutionally racist, homophobic and misogynistic in a damning report. In an open letter to the Mayor of London and Home Secretary Suella Braverman, Sir Mark said officers had been diverted to the Force's Directorate of Professional Standards, DPS. According to his findings, 4 in 5 of the original inquiries into officers accused of domestic and sexual violence in the last decade did not result in the correct action and should be reassessed. Not only have we increased our DPS by 150 people, but the scale and urgency of this work has meant diverting officers from other missions, such as serious and organised crime and counter-terrorism, he wrote. Over the last 3 months, we have had on average 90 additional officers and staff from these areas supporting DPS. Many had volunteered. Sir Mark's letter updated the Met's efforts to weed out rogue officers. Vetting rules had been tightened, and in the next 6 months, about 100 officers will have their status reviewed and may well end up leaving the organisation. He said it will be the first step in the biggest drive on professional standards in the Metropolitan Police in 50 years. We have hundreds of people who shouldn't be here, and the tens of thousands of good men and women here are as embarrassed and angered by that as anybody, and they're helping us sort them out. Sir Mark has previously said he was considering banning anyone with convictions other than the most minor from the force. He told BBC Radio 4's Today programme that the current policy on accepting staff was too permissive and left too much ground for interpretation. He added that Byzantine and complex police regulations mean that some officers under investigation have already been sacked by the Met, but were then reinstated by an independent lawyer. Listeners will be surprised to know that the Commissioner doesn't have a final say who is in his or her organisation. The move follows the murder of Sarah Everard by Met Police officer Wayne Couzens and the jailing of serial rapist and disgraced officer David Carrick. A poll commissioned by BBC London found public confidence in the Met Police has been shattered. Out of more than 1,000 people surveyed, almost half of female respondents surveyed said they totally distrusted the Met following numerous controversies involving some of its officers. Last month, a major review by Baroness Louise Casey branded the Met institutionally racist, sexist and homophobic, highlighting a boys' club culture. In January, after Carrick's guilty plea, the Met announced plans to recheck staff accused of domestic abuse and sexual violence in the 10 years to April 2022. Of 1,131 individuals reinvestigated, 246 will face no formal action because correct action was taken at the time. 608 will undergo a new assessment to pursue new or missed lines of inquiry, including possibly talking again to victims and witnesses, and 196 face formal risk management measures and potentially a review to determine if they should remain in the force. All of these cases will be reassessed by an independent panel of experts, the letter said. However, one survivor told BBC News she has little confidence the Met can change. Brooke, not her real name, complained to the force in 2021 about sexual violence and domestic abuse by a serving senior officer, but says she got nowhere, explaining it was like banging your head against a brick wall. In 2020, Brooke, now aged 24, suffered rape, assault and verbal abuse by an officer with whom she was in a relationship. When she became pregnant, he tried to stop her seeing her own family and wanted to control how she used her phone. She eventually had a termination and escaped the relationship. I still have flashbacks, she says, but her complaints to the Met's Professional Standards Department had no effect, and she says her abuser is still a police officer. All I've ever been met with is a wall of silence. They tried to brush everything under the carpet, and that hasn't changed. No one has ever made contact with me to say they were looking at anything again. On the website Police Me Too, Brooke writes it's a broken system, set up to protect abusers. Another survivor, Liz, who was abused by a serving officer as a 14-year-old in the 1990s, believes the Met is moving in the right direction. She waived her right to anonymity to speak to BBC Breakfast Jane McCubbin. Her abuser, Anthony Smith, was jailed last August for raping and sexually assaulting 3 young girls. Liz, who asked the BBC not to use her full name, said, I do think that if the public can see that people are being sacked or they're being held to account for what they've done, we can move that forward. But it's a huge task to undertake. Crucially, she hopes her example will encourage other survivors to come forward, saying if we talk about it, we can make a difference. If we pretend it doesn't happen, nothing's ever going to change. The letter also reveals 161 Met officers have criminal convictions. Of these, 76 are for serious traffic offences such as drink driving, 49 are for dishonesty or violence, 8 committed the offences as police officers and are still with force, 3 have convictions for sexual offences. The chairman of London's Police and Crime Committee, Susan Hall, said Sir Mark's findings showed that things are going to get much worse before they get better. She told BBC Radio 4's Today programme that she was pleased Sir Mark was taking action. She added, we must get trust and confidence back in our police service. Other measures include include checking the records of all of the Met's 50,000 employees against the police national database. The 10,000 checked so far reveal 38 potential cases of misconduct and 55 cases of off-duty association with a criminal.